Everybody, welcome to my live show. My name is Sam Kary. I am the host and founder of the new EdTech Classroom. And today we are going to be talking about Google Jamboard teaching tips. I have a jam-packed show for you today with loads of different ideas for how to use Google Jamboard. And if you are new to this show, welcome. We have a show on this channel every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I try my best to answer your questions live on the show. So as you have questions, please put those in the chat. If I don't get to your question and you really want to ask it, please drop it in, ask it again, and I will try to pull that question on and answer it as we're going to make this an interactive experience. And I want to be able to answer the questions that you have about teaching with Google Jamboard. If you missed my show last week with Michael Hernandez, I definitely recommend that you check out that show. We talked about how we can use this current upheaval moment in education to really as an opportunity to rethink how we could reimagine educational institutions. It was a really inspirational show. I was so fortunate to have Michael on, so definitely check that out. And next Thursday, I'm really excited to be sharing with you all about Hopera or Hopara, depending if you say it with an Australian accent or not. And if you're not familiar with Hopera and you use Google for education tools, you definitely do not want to miss this show. You're going to be mind blown by the added functionality that Hopera gives to Google for education and wonder how you ever taught without it. So definitely come check that show out next Thursday as well. A couple of other quick announcements before we get started here. One, if you are interested in my online course, The 21st Century Classroom, there is a link in the video description below to get more information, get the latest enrollment updates. And if you are an educator, a teacher, school leader who's just interested in getting more support with developing technology integrated curriculum, I'd love to talk with you about how I can help you out. There's also a link in the video description to be able to book a call with me so we can talk about that. And lastly, I'm excited to announce that I'm also now on TikTok. So I have been trying to post a video every week, and that's or every day of the week. That's my goal, to post a quick 60-second or less tech tip on TikTok. I just got started. There is also a link in the video description below. So if you are interested in checking me out on TikTok, then hop on over, subscribe to me on TikTok, and I'm putting up some content on there that's not on my YouTube channel that's more conducive to a quick tip. So I'd love to see you over there. And while you're checking out my link for TikTok, I also have all the links to all of my different social media accounts. One way you can support this channel is just by following me on those social media accounts and liking the things that I do, sharing them. And it's also a great way to just hear about updates and everything that's going on with different events that I'm participating in and different content that I'm putting out. And to that point as well, you can show your appreciation for tips that I share in this video just by liking it. You share it with other teachers that you know. If you leave a comment, that's also helpful on the video as well or during the live show. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and that'll make sure you don't miss any of my weekly updates. So again, thanks for coming, and check out all those links in the video description. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started talking about Google Jamboard today. So I have to be honest, I used to be a little bit lukewarm on Google Jamboard, and I'm sort of changing my mind because they keep adding new features to Google Jamboard. So Google Jamboard is relatively new on the scene. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with Google Jamboard, it started as a physical smartboard that you could actually purchase. So a Jamboard was a physical item you could have in your classroom. And sometimes that confuses people that there's a web version now, and there's even a Jamboard app for iPad. And you don't need to have the physical Jamboard, obviously, to use the web-based version, and the web-based version is totally free. One reason why I'm hopeful that they'll continue to add new features to the web-based version is because the physical Jamboard already has a lot more features and functionality, and it does appear that Google is kind of moving in that direction. So it's becoming a much more functional, much more useful tool. And so I'm going to show a lot of different ways that that can be done. So in the show, we'll talk about how we can use Google Jamboard for intro type activities in your engage phase of the lesson to kick lessons off with a whole group interactive activity. We'll look at how you can use Jamboard in the middle or end of a lesson sequence to have students review or share out what they've learned. And also show you some different tricks like how to set up different backgrounds by pulling them in from other programs or other slide decks that you create now that you can also add backgrounds in Google Jamboard, which is a relatively new feature. And I'll show you how to do some other little tricks like how to set it up for small group work, how to set it up so it just gets sent to an individual, but you could use that for a digital interactive notebook. So tons of great material on this show. And I also just want to point out that I have a couple of videos, actually 3 on my channel that exclusively or mostly exclusively feature Jamboard. This video I just put out on Monday, and this video is about how to bring in these custom backgrounds. So I'm going to show a little bit of that, but if you want to learn more about how to do that, then definitely check that out. It's in the video description below. I just want to shout out right now that we have a special guest. Flip Classroom Tutorials is on the show. Flip, you are actually somebody that I've looked up to, early pioneer in the field of making tutorials and YouTubing as a teacher. So it's great that you're here. Thanks so much for joining today. Okay, so Google Jamboard backgrounds with Canva Edu, definitely check that out to learn how to bring in some different backgrounds. I also posted a Google Jamboard update, and this is showing some of the new features as well, and specifically how you can add text boxes, although that's not entirely new anymore. And this is my first Jamboard video that I posted, where I also show some different ideas about how to use Google Jamboard. And fun fact, this video right now is almost at 1 million views. It would be my first video to have 1 million views. I think it's going to hit that in the next couple of days or so. So it's been a popular video. So here we are talking about Google Jamboard. All right, so let's jump over here and get into Google Jamboard. If you haven't checked out Google Jamboard, you can check it out by going to jamboard.google.com. And this will show you all the recent, what they call jams that you created. And then you can also go down here to the orange plus to add a new one. And here you'll basically see that you have a blank background. So what I'm going to do to start is just show all the basic features here about how to use Google Jamboard, and I'm going to progress in complexity over the course of the show. So I'll pretend, that we know nothing about it, and it's going to get increasingly more complex and doing all kinds of different fancy fun things with Google Jamboard here. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see that you have some different tools, and this is something to watch out for because they keep adding new tools here. So when it started, they didn't have, for example, the text box tool. They didn't have the shapes tool. And so those are new. So this top tool here is a pen tool. I get a lot of funny comments about this, about how hard it is to draw with a digital pen, and comments about, my writing with it. And yes, I am just writing with a mouse. You can get to a point where you're doing that with a trackpad. Not ideal though, and that's why they actually ended up adding this text tool here. So you can have drawing. I'll show you how this could be useful later when you just have students do things like circle ideas that they like, or put check marks by things, stuff like that. But probably not going to have students do any kind of extensive writing with the draw tool. Below it is an eraser tool. So this can be used to erase what was already done. And then there's also a select tool. This select tool, if there's nothing to select right now, but I'll show you in a moment. If you have an image or you have something that you've put on here, it allows you to move that kind of stuff around. You can also clear the frame. So we had that drawing, we can just clear that out. One of the tools that I use quite often is the sticky note tool. So here you can write down to start a lesson what you would want students to do. You can change the color, post it, and then this becomes an interactive piece that you can drag all around wherever you want it to go, make it as large as you want it. And you can also easily duplicate these. So you can copy them over and over again, and then quickly change the text if you wanted as well. So we could make connections and we can make predictions. All right, so we have sticky note, we have drawing tool. Now there's also an image tool. So adding an image will allow you to pull images in from your computer. You can pull images, you could take a picture of yourself. You could pull images in from Google. You can pull them in from photos if you've uploaded those into your Google Photos from Drive. So this used to be the way that people would kind of create backgrounds. They would bring in images and then lay that image over the background. But you don't have to do that anymore. So now for images, if you wanted to, I think I showed this in one of my other videos, bring in like a picture of pyramids and then ask students to make a prediction about what they're looking at or how they think it was built. You can easily bring in an image like that. And then of course you can duplicate that as well. This is more of a cosmetic thing, but if you lay those over each other, you'll see that with the order button here, or the order option, you can bring this to the front. So that would lay the sticky note on top of the image. So, if you start bringing things together and kind of making your own graphic organizers on here, that can be a useful tool as well, so that it's arranged the way that you want it to look. Now, a new-ish tool in 2020 is this ability here to bring in shapes. And again, I used to emphasize this as a way to basically build a graphic organizer directly on here. So you could do something like add a square and bring that square in, and then you could continue. I'm just going to delete that picture. You could continue to bring those squares, either making your own or duplicating them, and then you could label it at the top so that students know what to do for that particular part of the graphic organizer, right? Like this. And again, here's where I might want to use that order tool to bring to the front. Now, this kind of used to be one of the better ways to set up a graphic organizer. I would no longer recommend that you do that now that you can actually just bring in a background. So the shapes are, to me, a little bit less important now that you can actually just bring in your own background, and we'll look at that in a second. And the reason why the shape is a little bit less than ideal is because the main problem that we'll look at in a second is that everybody has uniform editing access. And so it would be very easy for other people to just, delete that shape. Of course, you can undo it, but still not so ideal. So that's why I recommend doing other things. Some people do things like, they'll draw a square like this over the top of the whole thing, and then they'll turn this into a transparent box so that this stuff behind it here is fixed. But you don't really need any of those hacks anymore because of the ability to bring in your own background. But just so you know, that's what some people are doing to figure out how can I make that fixed and not so movable. Okay, so big addition, which is to me surprising that they never had it, but the ability to add a text box. This, believe it or not, didn't always used to be here. With the text box, you can click where you want it to go and then actually type inside of Jamboard. And of course, you have some options for the size. You can drag it around wherever you want it to go, things like that. Change the color, alignment of the text, basic things that you can do with any other text. All right, I'm gonna check out some of these questions. And yeah, some people are talking about bringing in Canva, teaching on my toes, bringing in Canva. I am going to show that in this show as well. And yeah, I do. So I agree with this comment about using the styluses If you have the ability to use the stylus with a touchscreen on a touchscreen Chromebook or on an iPad, then the drawing tool actually becomes highly functional. So that is kind of like a game changer, whereas this is like, not so great. But once you actually bring a stylus in, if you have not tried writing with a digital stylus, they're awesome. So that can be, if you have that ability, really a great way to have students write directly onto a Jamboard. Okay, so those are the basic tools. This is one as well, the laser tool, where you can do things like point to the place that you want to draw students' attention to as well. Okay. All right. So here there are a couple of tools. There's an undo tool. There's also a zoom tool. So this allows you to zoom in or zoom out, things like that. The background tool we're going to look at in just a moment. These are basic backgrounds that have always been here. So you can do things like add graph paper and line paper, or at least been there for a while. What's new is, or relatively new, is this ability to bring in a background image, which will fix background to the back of Jamboard and totally kind of changes the game for Jamboard. So we'll be looking at that quite a bit. And then again, this clear the frame would just wipe everything and allow you to start fresh again. Now with Jamboard, you can very easily just add new pages. So you just add new pages by creating a new frame. You can see I can basically add just unlimited amount of frames here. And you could think of these sort of like slides in a slide deck. And then up at the top, there are some options that are useful here. One is the ability to download this as a PDF, also to save the frame as an image. So once we actually get into making one, I'll show you how you could save the frame as an image really quickly. That can be something you can re-upload for students so that they can go back and review it. So lots of ways that would be useful. And you can also make a copy, and I'll be showing you how to use that, particularly if you want to create a template and copy it over and over again as well for something like small group work. Now this share button up here as well, we're going to get into this and all the share settings and permissions because that gets a little bit complicated as well. But I just want to start right here by showing some different ideas about how you could use this at the beginning of class. So beginning of class, or I should say beginning also of lesson sequences. So you can kind of think of this as the beginning of your each individual day potentially, but also the engage phase of a lesson sequence where you're really trying to get to better understand what students know, to have them make connections to prior content, to make predictions, inferences, things like that. So some different things that you can do here. You can you can ask students to do things like make connections to prior knowledge or prior content. So here, students would be sharing what's something that you already know about this subject. So for example, let's say that you were a science teacher, you're about to teach DNA. You could just quickly have them put up here, what is something you already know about DNA, right? And then students would just quickly post their responses about what they know. So this is one way you might want to kick off a lesson sequence or a particular lesson. You might also want to have students make predictions. So let's say you're reading a class novel and you're in the middle of the book. You could start class by asking students to make a prediction about what they think is going to happen next. And then again, students will just be posting their responses about what they think will happen next. You can also ask students to do things like quote analysis. So if you have a quote that's relevant to the subject that you're teaching, so let's say you teach philosophy or something like that, and you want to post something like the unexamined life is not worth living. And then just have students write down what they think that means. So again, what I do here, add a sticky, what do you think this quote means? And then what students would be doing is posting their responses, analyzing that quote. And then another way that I like to potentially start off a lesson or a lesson sequence would be to bring in an image and have students make inferences about that image. They could make predictions about that image as well. So one image, for example, that you could potentially bring in would be something, let's say you teach geography or you teach history, and you want students to be able to talk about how geography impacts people's lives. You could bring in an image of, say, something like the desert and bring that in. And then you could ask students to make an inference here about what it would be like to live in this place. So you're kind of not telling students necessarily, hey, we're going to be talking about how geography impacts people's lives, but you're going to get them to already start to engage in the content for what you're going to be teaching. Okay, so those are just some basic ideas for how you could kick off a lesson to get started. And so let's actually look at what it would look like now if I pull in a student. So when you are inviting students to come in, you can do that several different ways. So I am going to show how to actually push this out and assign it through Google Classroom in a minute. But another option is that you just directly share Google Jamboard with them. So before I do that, I'm going to check out, see if there are any questions that I can answer as well. I see there's a lot. Yeah, so let's look at this question here. One is what the difference is between sticky notes and text boxes. Nothing really, just the way that they look. So not a significant difference in terms of what can be added to them. Really, the main difference here is just what they look like. And I'll see if there's another question here. Oh, so this question, Justin, this is about how I remove background from my video. You're probably talking about me right now. So I have a green screen behind me, and I'm using Ecamm, which is software that allows you to green screen. I'm actually going to be doing a show in a few weeks about how to live stream, and so that's coming. Okay, so here I want to show you a couple things about sharing this with students. So this is still where there's an issue with Jamboard, something that's important to know and perhaps will change. But right now, there are really only two ways to share Jamboard. So you can either share Jamboard as a viewable file, or you can share it as editable. Now, one nice thing is that it's very easy to switch back and forth between the two. So if you want to share it first as viewable, you can do that. If you just want to teach on Jamboard, then give edit access and then switch right back to view access, you can do that. And I will show you how to do that. But you cannot control the editing levels. And that's definitely a qualm people have, and a qualm that I still have. And I think eventually my guess is they'll probably deal with that in some way. But right now, basically everybody has the same level of editing access for the most part. There's a little bit you can control about it, not that much. I'll show you in a second. So you have a couple of options here. One is that you could just change to anyone with the link, and then you can get this copyable link that you can share. If you want students to actually be able to get in here and participate, which you probably want, then you're going to need to change this to editor. Now, if you do this, I'm going to go here to copy, and then I'm going to bring that in for a student here. You'll notice that if we share it this way, when a student comes in, and this is like a Google rule that or it applies to different Google Google apps, that if you share something like this where it's just unrestricted access, that people are going to come in as anonymous animal. And that makes it impossible to know who's on the board. It's still not that great for knowing who's on the board, but this makes it pretty much totally impossible. So if you want to deal with that a little bit, differently so that you can at least see student initials when you hover over, what you would want to do is rather than make it public on the web, you can still have this be restricted. But what you're going to do when you go to share is you could enter specific emails for your students. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing what I'm doing right now and just entering manually a student's name. You probably want to do something like set up a class list in Google Contacts. And I don't have time to show that in this show, but you can, in Google Contacts, you could just create a class list. So all you would type would be Mr. Kary's 6th grade class, and then your whole student emails would populate in. You could copy and paste your email list from Google Classroom or from another place where you have student emails. But this will give you a little bit higher level of privacy for the students that are coming in. So I have the student name. Again, notice I have left him as an editor. I'm actually going to put him as a viewer here to show you how I can quickly toggle back and forth to give the student edit and view access. Okay, so now I'm going to send it to him. I'm notifying him as well. I could still get that shareable link with him if I wanted to say share this with Dan in the Zoom chat or something like that. So here on the student board, you'll see now that the student is in, but that the student has view only access. So why would I want to do that? You might want to do view only to start if you're doing some explanation. So, kind of the rule of like, you don't pass out the papers on student desks while you're still talking, because then they're going to start working on something. So if you want them to just focus on what you're doing, I would start with view only so they can just observe. You can use the laser pointer. You can do a little demo. So you might want to model what that would look like. I infer, and then give them a sentence starter and put it up. And they're just going to be watching you at this point. Now, when you want the student to actually be able to edit it, you just need to change the permission. So you go back here to share, and you're going to change Dan's permission level to be an editor, and then click save, and then you'll see that it's going to show up on his page. And if it doesn't show up automatically, you can just ask him to refresh it. And then Dan will be able to get in and he could do things, like add a text box or drawings or any of the tools that I just showed you as well. So now he can make an inference here. So you'll see that that shows up. And did you notice really quickly how that, like for a split second, his name showed up very fast on there? That's actually all you're going to be able to use as an indicator of who participated on this board. You can see up here that Dan is in, but it's hard to tell once you have lots and lots of people on here writing their names, how to be able to tell who is writing. If anybody has better ideas about how to do that in terms of how to know who is posting other than asking them to post their name, which is voluntary, I would love to hear about that, because I'm still trying to figure out, how to make that a little bit better, right? Okay, so this obviously creates some potential issues that don't exist with programs like Padlet, where you can have a much higher degree of control. So I already see, can students mess with the board? They can. So a couple of tips about using Google Jamboard. One, that you do toggle back and forth between view and edit. So students just posted up very quickly, right? Now I want to take away that access. I can just toggle back so that now they only have view access. And when Dan tries to write, he is going to be prevented from doing so, or he should have been prevented. What did I do here? Okay. All right, so when he tries to, he will see now he only has view only access. And actually you saw that what he wrote didn't actually show up, right? Because I had changed the permission level. So that's one thing you can do, is just that quick toggle back and forth. If you have that whole class list, then you don't need to do that for each individual student. If you made it open for the public, it's just one change, view, edit, view, edit. You could toggle back and forth many times if you wanted to. Another suggestion is that You use it for the most part for this type of activity for just like a quick check-in activity, and it's not something where you're using it when you have everybody in it as a big open workspace. You can use it as a workspace, but if you're going to do that, I would recommend you use it as a workspace if you're assigning this to small groups of students or individual students, as opposed to opening it to your whole class. And the other point is, to talk about digital citizenship and not, deleting people's things and stuff like that. But if it's a big problem and if you teach younger students, set it up so that it's smaller groups, think strategically about the groupings so that they're going to be respectful about that. It's probably the biggest flaw right now with Google Jamboard. And if you're going to use it, it's one you need to be very aware of when you're using it. All right, going to check and see. Yeah, so yeah, there's definitely some comments here. One about just making some inappropriate drawings and things like that, which yes, sometimes happens. Yes, you can delete some things as soon as you see them. And another thing you can do, you can, for your own sake, right? Let's see somebody put something up that's not appropriate. You can quickly save that frame as an image. That's going to save it for you as an image, so at least you also can see it. You might even be able to catch like whose little icon is up there if you're really fast with it. But that's something else you could also use just to preserve what happened. And then, like I see Martha saying, that you want to have a conversation with students about that. So you could have that saved and, be able to then talk about that with your class as well. So you can use that as a management tool. Okay, so we looked just at some basics here about how to get students in. One thing that I did also want to show here that most people probably don't know about is that little gear icon. So if you go up here to the gear icon, let's say that you do have Dan as an editor. I would recommend that you take off editors can change permissions and share. And you probably also want to take this one off. Viewers and commenters can see the option to download, print, and copy. And this will give you a little bit of higher level admin access so that students can't do all the things that just an admin owner of the Jamboard would be able to do. Okay, so now the reason, or one reason I should say, why Jamboard is more powerful now is the ability to set a background. So a huge flaw of it used to be the fact that you could not bring in your own background. You had to kind of generate your own graphic organizers and things like that were easily movable. You can pair Jamboard with other programs to bring in custom backgrounds. And what's so awesome about some of these is that they've already been made. So for example, you could go to Canva and let me actually back out here. So if you are not familiar with Canva, actually it'd be interesting to see also just in the chat, those who are, if you have a Canva account already, just to let us know. Be curious to know your experience with Canva. But you can register for a Canva account for free. If you are familiar with a program like Adobe Spark Post, it has a lot of similar functions. And you can get a pro account for free as an educator, which is a huge plus. And you just have to give them your K-12 email address. And then when you log in, looks like we had a lot of Canva fans. Awesome. They have pre-made templates. Now, you can actually do these directly in Canva. I don't have time to show that here, but you could bring all your students in and have them actually work on these directly in Canva. But another thing you can do with these pre-made whiteboard templates is download them and bring them into Jamboard. So let's say, for example, that we have something like this one here, where there's a little dialog box, and they're calling this the mind map brainstorm. And these little boxes as well that are giving some ideas about what students can post. This is fully editable. So, if you didn't want this here, right, this is kind of giving a teacher direction. You can just quickly delete all of those like that. And if you also wanted to change the words here, you could do that as well. So if you wanted to, instead of a mind map, call it connections, you could do that too, right? But it is a mind map, so I'll leave it a mind map. Okay, so fully editable. And notice how this one is actually a video. So it plays with this little animation here. And you can actually bring that animation in. I know I'm going to offend half the audience by calling this a GIF or a GIF for the other half. You just want to change the file type here to GIF or GIF and then download that file. So if you try to download it as a video, it's not going to allow you to bring it in as a background video. So the way you get it is with the GIF file and then click download. So that's going to download that GIF on your computer. And then what you can do is go back to Jamboard. And I'm just going to go over here to a totally new frame. And then you can go to set background, click image, and then you're just going to find that on your computer. So here, go to mind map and find the GIF that I just made right there. Click open. Oh, that's another one, but it's okay. That's another one that I had. That's all right. Same idea. Okay, so you can see here, right, that it has this little animation. So that's kind of fun, and I think adds a layer, to Jamboard that makes it a lot more interesting. Thanks for the comment. It's GIF, not GIF, or GIF, not GIF. Yes. Okay. So here, you already have a pre-made template. Great, right? You didn't even have to do anything to it. It's pre-made. There's tons of them like this. So now you have shared that with Dan the demo. Whoops, excuse me. Sorry, let me move that over a little bit. Got that for Dan. And now Dan will see that background. I'm going to make sure that he has editing access as well. And then he'll be able to write directly on top of this background. So you could leave those stickies here, right? This is almost like a little scaffold where you could put, I think the main idea is, and then move it over to that space like that, right? So to that point, what I'm showing here about scaffolding, you could, particularly if you had younger students and you wanted to really give them some structure, you could go back to Canva and you could find something like this one here. And I think this would be a particularly useful idea for, say, elementary students. You could basically tell them who needs to post on a space. So for example, we could put the names of students rather than these other prompts, Dan the demo, and we're going to have my other, Sally demo student here. And then once you download this and bring that in, these would show up as backgrounds so that students would know, oh, I need to put my sticky right on top of that. So, particularly for younger students, that might be a trick to help them put it in the right spot and make sure that they're not fooling around too much with the board. Okay, so we looked at some custom backgrounds, and what I want to show you now is a little bit more advanced way to use this, which would be to start using it for small group work. So most of the strategies that I showed in the beginning these were just kind of ideas for opening a lesson. But what if you want students to actually do work in this and build something, make something, share ideas together? That's where I would probably start to move a lot of your Jamboards over into small group work, though there are some times when you also would just want to, say, have them build maybe a collective mind map as a whole group, but particularly just to make sure that kind of minimize messing around, you could have it for a smaller group of students. So what you would do is, again, we're going to check out some of these templates here. You can find a template. So let's say that they're going to do a project. There's this project template here. You could also have them brainstorm ideas. So there's lots of different things that you can do. So we'll bring in this one, which is essentially like a project planner where they have to write their team name and goals and potential risks. And again, you could change all of this so that it applies to a particular project that you're doing. And then you would bring this in. And if you wanted to, you could bring this in as a still just by downloading it as an image. So I'll download this GIF, again, Visual Retro Brainstorm, make sure I remember that name. And for this one, I'm going to back out here and just create a totally new board. So I'll go back to set background and let me make sure I have it. Oh, not quite. Oh, there it is. Okay. Visual Retro Brainstorm. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to bring this in and we can envision that I've edited this. It's all about my specific group project that students are going to be working on, right? So I'm going to call this Group Project Planner. Okay. And now this is going to be essentially my master copy. So we'll start here. Actually, I'm going to start with, we'll go with group 1. And let's say that you've split. What I'm going to show you is actually going to work best if you're able to split your class into 4 groups. I know that's probably not the most ideal number because it's a kind of a small number. You're probably doing more like 5 or 6, but going to show you a way you could split it in 4 to be able to see all the Jamboards at the same time, but you could do this for as many groups as you wanted to make them for. So what I'll do here to make this available to groups is go up to the 3 dots and I'm going to click make a copy. And I'll just change this one now to be group 2. And I'm just going to replicate this process basically over and over again until I have my 4 groups. So make a copy again. And this time we're going to go here with group 3. And then I will copy this again and I will make this for group 4. And now what I'm going to do is use a screen splitter to be able to see all 4 boards at the same time. And actually, before I do that, there are a few ways that you could share these with the groups. So you could either share them manually. So if you wanted to just go here and do exactly the same thing where you're typing in student emails, you could do that. You could also take this. So if you had Group Project Planner number 1, and let's say you're in Google Classroom and you go to create assignment, and you can bring in Jamboard in Google Classroom. So this is your Group Project Planner. And we're going to do this one's for number 1. So here I'm going to add this from Google Drive. And I should be able to find this in my my folder. Should have put the number at the beginning so I could more easily see which number group that was for. But I'll click Insert. And then here you would want to change Student Can Edit. And they're just going to get 1 Jamboard. And what I'm going to do is go up here to my students, and I'm just going to assign this to the students that are in this group. So just Dan, just Sam are going to be assigned this particular board. And then I will also repeat this process for the other boards. So if you are using Google Classroom, this is a good way to just push assignments out to individual groups on your Google Classroom page. You will be able to see all the assignments that you posted to the groups. They will not be able to see all those different assignments. Okay, so I'm on a little bit of a delay there apparently for Google Classroom, so I'm just gonna click out of there. But now what I can do, so now we can envision, we've shared these with each of the group members. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click Shift on these 4 tabs up here. And then I'm going to go over to tab resize. I show how to use tab resize in my must-have Google Chrome extensions for teachers video. It's a great extension because it allows you to split your screen into quadrants. So not just splitting it in half. So when you click it, then it's going to now show you all 4. So now let's say, okay, students are in each of these. I'm able to monitor each of the boards more easily. And you could still, toggle back and forth. So if you had some other ones up here, right, I'll duplicate that over just to show. You could toggle back and forth. So even if you had a double amount of groups, it still just gives you greater visibility. So tab resize could be a way that would help you be able to see what's going on. You have editing access. You could even be jumping in and kind of responding on each of these as well. Okay, so now we've looked at just some basic tools, and we've looked at bringing in some backgrounds. We've looked at group work. Just let me drag that over for a second there. So now I just want to talk very briefly about some other ways you can use it in the middle of a lesson. So Canva also has some effective graphic organizers for this. So I'll just show these very quickly here. So, rather than just doing these types of activities to start off a lesson, or like I showed, to do group planning work for just a small group, you could also have students come back after they've gone out and learned some information to share what they know on a collective mind map. So, let's say, for example, well, I'll show this main idea board here again, but or actually this is a slightly different one. Let's say that we all just learned about a topic. We went out and watched some Edpuzzle videos and read some Actively Learn articles. And now we need to start organizing those ideas because we're going to be using them to fill in a graphic organizer, to make a digital comic, or write an essay or something like that. One way to make sure that that's equitable and everybody has the information and is learning from each other would be to pull in something like this, where you're coming back as a check-in. What did you learn? You're doing some mini lesson in the middle of a lesson sequence after students have gone out and learned some new content. And then again, you could save that as an image. And again, the way you do that is by going up here. You could save the frame as an image. You could download the work that students did as a PDF, and then you could post it to your learning management system so that that was a reference for students to have. So that is a good way to, it's an effective way to bring, sorry, I'm on the wrong here, tab there, to bring the floor up so that every student has the key information and students aren't being left behind without the information that they would need in order to go forward with a project or whatever final assessment that you're going to do. Okay, so what I want to show now is how you could also use Google Jamboard for digital interactive notebooks. I know digital interactive notebooks are something that people are really interested in. Some people are building them in, you can build them in primarily Google Slides, but you can also use Google Jamboard. And actually, I think Google Jamboard might be a better tool. Actually, I think it is a better tool than Google Slides for making digital interactive notebooks. And the reason for that, the reason why I say that, is because it's an open canvas. So Google Slides is not an open canvas, right? You cannot just like write anywhere on it with the same level of ease. You can place things in particular places, but then you have to like shift down and stuff like that. But you can't just grab a text box like that and write it and then drag it easily wherever it can go. So that's, this is coded differently so that you can do that in Google Jamboard. Makes it a different type of tool, and I think makes it more conducive to digital interactive notebooks, more usable, user-friendly for students. So I'm going to go back here again to Jamboard, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a blank one. If you have not, and same thing, I would love to hear in the comments as well. If you have not checked out Slides Mania or Slides Carnival, definitely check them out. So if you're a fan of Slides Mania, I'd love to hear that. I'm a huge fan. I love Slides Mania. It's a woman who makes these, and she is awesome. And just to plug, she does all this for free. So you can actually, I think, like she has like a buy her a coffee to give her a little tip, because she makes all these amazing free downloadable Google Slides templates. And one of the template types that she has been making are these notebook style templates. So if you're looking to make interactive notebooks, she has all these awesome student planners, notebooks, things like that she's already pre-created that you can take and download. So this is one of them that I downloaded from Slidesmania. Thanks again, Slidesmania, for making these. And what you can do with these is download these as an image and then bring them into Jamboard. So you can envision that I want to set up the basic structure, the basic outline for my digital notebook. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to go to File, Download, and I will download these as an image file so that I have it. And then I'm going to go back here to Jamboard. These are going to be my digital interactive notebook. And then I'm going to go to Set Background, and I will bring that background in. Oops, my screen has gone small. I'll fix that in a second. Okay, here. Okay, so that brought that now in as a background, and I can continue to do that. So I can look at these different template types and I can start to edit them, right? So I might want to put things in here like the instructions for the digital interactive notebook start off with some structure. So you could pre-build it as much as you want, right? So I'm going to go here again, just do one more to show. And bring that one in as a background for this second page here. So go here to Set Background, and I'm going to bring in this other one here. Okay. I know there's so many questions coming in. I'm going to stay after. I know we're getting close to 5. I will definitely stay and answer some questions. So appreciate everybody hanging in there. And definitely keep putting questions in. I will be taking some Q&A time at the end. Okay. So you can imagine I've set this up, right? Where I have all my different frames and I've kind of set up a basic template for the notebook. So the first thing that you can do if you're a Google Classroom user is go to Google Classroom, and when you're in Google Classroom, you can assign a Jamboard template out to students as an individual copy. So go here to classwork and go to create assignment. I don't know what's going on with my Google Classroom right now, super slow. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to go to create assignment, and my assignment page is blank. Oh no. All right. I will, well, this is what I'll do. While I'm waiting for Google Classroom to load, of course, Google Classroom is going to have a problem. Then I'll look at a couple of questions here as well. Okay, so this question, can videos be included in Jamboard? Right now, videos, as far as I'm aware, unless somebody else knows something differently, you cannot bring videos into Jamboard at the moment, but that will likely change, I'm guessing. Okay, this is a great question about e-portfolios. I know this is not quite what we're doing today exactly, but I'm actually going to be putting out some content about this. Google Sites is a great option. Seesaw is a great option as well. And I have a video I've been planning about making digital interactive notebooks with Google Sites. So that's coming out. Yes, I agree, Marie. Locking the background in Google Jamboard is absolutely a game changer. All right, I don't know. Google Classroom, of course, would be like broken right now when I'm trying to get in. Not sure exactly what's happening here with my Google Classroom. So let me try one other class and see if I can get that to work. Do I have people in this class? No, that's a problem. Okay. Had mine all set up and it wasn't, now it's not ready to go. Okay, I have one student, that'll work. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, going back, what I'm doing here is I'm back in Google Classroom. My other Google Classroom broke for some reason, and I'm going to assign this Jamboard template that I just made as a copy that's going to get pushed out to all students. So I'll go here to create, I'll go to assignment, And this is going to be my digital interactive notebook. And I'll write whatever instructions I want. And then I'm going to go to Add, Google Drive. And then I'm going to find that in my Drive recents folder here. And then I'm going to change this from view the file to make a copy for each student. Now, unfortunately, this class, because my other one was broken, only has one student in, but you get the idea. You have your whole student list. It's going to make a copy for every single student that's in your class. And just give this a quick due date here. I'll assign it. The benefit of doing it this way now is that every student now has an individual copy of the notebook, and it's now going to allow me to go into the Google Drive folder that's been generated through Google Classroom that I'll show you in a second if I can get Google Classroom to work, and that you can click inside of in order to see individual student work. So I'll look at some other questions since right now, again, Google Classroom is letting me down. So I'll check out and answer some questions while we're waiting. Okay. So this question, let's see. How do I assess Jamboards? I also have a video coming out soon about this as well. I believe I'm going to release it next week, just about what you should be grading and what you should be assessing. I would not really assess the engage type activities that you're doing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, that it's adding something onto your plate that I don't think needs to be added onto your plate. I'll toggle over here real quickly. The other is that I don't personally believe, and again, I have a longer explanation for this that I'll share in an upcoming video, but that we should be assessing students based on formative assessments, because those should be times when students are allowed to make mistakes. And so we shouldn't be grading somebody, especially if that's going to be incorporated with their final grade. But that's kind of a bigger discussion. The short answer is I wouldn't necessarily grade a lot of this. However, I would still have systems of accountability to make sure that students are participating. That just might look differently than a grade per se, but that's a bigger question. Okay, I don't know what's going on. There's an error with Google Classroom. However, I think I have here, might be able to make this work. I think I still have some old ones here. Let me try. Okay, so I'm going to go to my class drive folder. Aha, yes. Okay, so let's pretend that that worked and Google Classroom was working and I made my copy. Luckily, I did this already. So you'll see that you have a folder that you can access again right here from your class drive folder. And when you click on that, you'll be able to see all the Jamboards that have been created for your students. If you go up here to the grid view, then you'll also just very easily be able to see them, and you could click inside of them to be able to access each of them. So if you're going to do digital interactive notebooks, this gives you a way to see them, to be able to click inside of them and check them out. Now, the issue that happens with digital interactive notebooks is that teachers want to set them up like this with some templates, but then you also want to continue to push more of the slides out to students as, say, an ongoing notebook, right? So you could do this differently in different ways. If it's just going to be something like this, you could have them all kind of set them up on their own, where all they're doing here is just setting a background, it's some paper, and you're giving them a prompt, right? That would be a really easy way to do it. Another option would be that you could have your main copy, and what you could do is have this built out and you continue to add new slides to this. So you can imagine that, we gave them this one. We're going to add a new slide here, and we're going to put a prompt on that, right? So what you could do, and again, I'm probably not going to be able to show this because of my Google Classroom issue right now, but what you can do is go to create and then pull in this slide deck as view only, and then leave it without a theme. So it should look Google Class. Leave it without any topic. So it'll sit right here at the top. We'll see if I can bring it in here. Maybe, might work. Okay, so this is that Google slide that I just made here, and I'm going to insert it. Now this, I haven't made a copy of this file yet, so I can still go in and I can edit this file because it's still my file. It's just that I'm sharing it through Google Classroom. So this file I can constantly be adding new slides to. And then once I assign it here, which again, I don't think it's going to show up, unfortunately, what it will show up at the top of Google Classroom. And you can basically just train students and teach them proactively for a while that they would open that slide deck. When they open it, they'll have it as a view only slide deck, so they would not be able to edit them. And then you can teach them how to go file, download, JPEG. They have this new frame. Maybe you put a new writing prompt on there. And then when they go into their own personal notebook, you just show them how to add that new page in there, like this. You can do this as well with Google Slides, where you post that view only one and have students add to their own slide deck. But what I like about Google Jamboard, right, is that ability. You've posted something like a prompt. Students can very easily go in and add a text box about what they think, about what they're reading or whatever it is that they're doing. You can be getting in right here through that Google Drive folder. You can click on that student's assignment and you can easily jump in and give them some feedback as well with your own text or sticky note. Okay. All right. So in spite of Google Classroom breaking on me in the middle of the show, I was happy to be able to show everybody all these different ways to potentially use Google Jamboard. Like I mentioned, they keep adding all these different tools and functions to it. So my hope is that it continues to grow in its usefulness as an educational tool. It does still have some limitations, particularly at the editing level. But if you're kind of strategic about it and use it adroitly, then I think you can still get a lot of use out of Google Jamboard. If you train teachers, it's awesome for teacher professional development as well. And one of the things that makes it a useful tool is how easy it is to put stuff up. It takes almost no effort to get things up and share ideas. So it's, it is an effective way to encourage everybody in the class to participate and really set up that culture of mandatory participation in your class. Okay. It's not just me thank you having issues with Google or with Google Classroom. I appreciate that. Okay. So I'm going to go over here to Q&A. And what I'll do during this time is just look through some of these questions. So if you left a question way back in the beginning, I'm going to try to scroll through them. But if you want to put that question again, then definitely do that because there are lots of questions here. Okay, so Janet is asking, if you have a whole class of students on the board, do you have to change to viewer or editor for each student? No, I would not do it that way. Again, you will either want to create a class list in Google Contacts so that you can just have a single name, like 7th grade social studies, that you would change permission for that entire list. Or you just want to set the link so that it's anyone with the link can access or anyone with the link can view or edit. Great question. Okay, so got some new ones coming down as well. Okay, let's see if I'm able to answer this question. Carol is asking, can you assign a Jamboard and then reassign the same Jamboard to the same student? Yeah, if the question is, can you take away somebody's permission and then give them permission back again, then the answer is yes, you can definitely do that. Carl is asking whether Jamboards can be embedded on Google Sites. Um, you know what? I don't actually know the answer to this question. Um, Somebody else in the conversation might know. Actually, Seth, I'm wondering if you know the answer to the question. Can you embed uh, Google Sites into, or Google Jamboard in Google Sites? Maybe, because you can bring in files from Google Drive. I haven't tested it. It's worth testing. Sylvia is asking whether or not, the screen splitter. So yeah, that and actually here, I'll put that in the chat for everybody. It's called Tab Resize. And I'll drop that in here for folks. So that's the direct link there for Tab Resize. And you can do what I showed for free. Okay, yeah, so this is more talking about, link. You could definitely link out to the Jamboard, just whether or not you would be able to directly embed it within Google Sites, I think is worth testing out. I'm not sure. We need to check in with flipped classroom tutorials to see if you always have the answer to those types of questions. So can you embed Jamboard in Google Sites is a good question. I need to figure that out. Okay. Yeah, I agree that. Thanks, Karen. That it's easy to use. It helps students collaborate, and I think it's the kind of tool that your administrators are going to like to see, and that I think starts to build that culture of collaboration and, like I said, mandatory participation. All right. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. I appreciate if you stayed over today. We went a little bit over time just because I had so much to show you about Google Jamboard. Check out my other videos about Google Jamboard. I have 3 of them. They're all in the video description. As I mentioned in the beginning of the show as well, you can show support for this show by just liking the video, sharing it with other teachers, leaving a comment, particularly after it's posted as well as a permanent video. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd encourage you to do that. Hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified of all my weekly video updates. I made a few announcements at the beginning of the show. One is that I'm now on TikTok. And so if you want to check out my 60-second or less tech tips of the day on TikTok, then that link is in the video description. Follow me on TikTok and also like those videos to show support. All my other social media links are in the video description as well. And something I forgot to mention is that I'm now starting, in addition to my weekly tutorial and my weekly live show, I'm starting to put out one tech tip on Tuesday, Tech Tip Tuesday for teachers, where I'm going to share just a shorter tip to help teachers out with using instructional technology. So look out for those. I just posted one about starting classes with interactive whole group activities. And one idea for how you could do that is with Google Jamboard. And then lastly, also put in the chat a link if you are a teacher, if you are a school leader, instructional leader, and you are interested in really taking a deep dive learning how to build technology integrated curriculum, you want some support with that, I'd love to talk with you about how I can help. That link will take you to 21centurycurriculum.com, where you can get a little bit more information and also book a free call with me to see how I can support you. So thanks so much, everybody. It was a great show. I hope you came away with some ideas for how to use Google Jamboard. Appreciate all the chat and all the participation. And I will see you next week for a show at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time about how to supercharge your Google education tools with Hopera. Can't wait for that show. So I will see you next week. Bye, everybody.